When I first set out to do this novel, because I am a science journalist, and because my previous novel, Autonomous, was considered to be hard science fiction, which is just kind of a fake term for science fiction that sounds science-y to us. It sounds like it could be plausibly true. I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I am gonna write the most hard science fiction time travel novel that's ever been written. It's gonna be so awesome. I'm gonna blow everyone away with my scientific acumen. So I called my friend Sean Carroll, who has just written a great book about the origin of time and space, which is called Something Deeply Hidden. And he teaches down at Caltech, and I'm like, if anybody knows how a time machine would work, it's gonna be Sean. So I get on the phone with Sean, I'm like fired up, and I'm like, okay, how am I gonna do it? And he's like, no. He actually, he was nice. He didn't actually completely laugh at me, but he said, look, I mean, there's no such thing as time travel. It's never gonna happen. It's just not a thing. It's not a thing in physics. It's not a thing in science. And so we started talking a little bit more about how I could do it, because at that point I was kind of all in on the whole time travel thing. I wasn't gonna just yank that out of my story and be like, okay, I have to stick to something scientific. What can physics give me? So he did, in fact, give me wormholes. He said, fine, use wormholes. That's vaguely plausible. But and so there are wormholes, and I'll read you a little section about that. But what he really did that was helpful in the world building for me was he was like, look, you can have something that is fantasy, like time travel, but have scientists respond to it the way a scientist would. And he said, look, you can have realistic science that's built around something that seems wildly implausible and that we don't understand. And that was really a great way for me to kind of start out thinking about this, because there are really, in our world now, there's kind of two types of science. There's discovery science, which is what this time machine is part of and what physics are part of. And then there's sort of innovation science, which is like technology. It's like that is the classic realm of the time travel story, is innovation science, right? A dude goes down into his basement and builds a time machine, right? That's the classic tale. Well, I wanted to write a story about discovery science, about scientists exploring something that they didn't understand, that didn't make sense. And so that's what brings me to Flin Flon, Manitoba. This is the time machine right here. And it's because in my universe, I wanted the time machines to fit into the way discovery sciences have evolved. And so my model was astronomy. So if you think about the history of astronomy, which eventually becomes astrophysics, and that's why Sean Carroll has a job, it starts out as people just sort of looking at the sky and recording where the celestial bodies are. They don't know what those bodies are, but they start to realize that they have predictable patterns. You can follow them to get directions. And then over time, it evolves into a kind of mystical system. And eventually, somewhere in the West, somewhere around the 18th century, people start saying, wait a minute, this could be science. And they start using scientific instruments more commonly to examine these heavenly bodies, and eventually we get astronomy. But astronomy starts out as just a bunch of people staring at stars. And so I said, all right, I love geology. Here's a thing that humans have been doing for a really long time. They've been pounding rocks together. It's very plausible that if you had a time machine that was a naturally occurring device in a rock, at some point, some human is gonna pound on that rock and activate the machine. So that's how my machines work, is that you go to a shield rock formation like this in Manitoba. This is on the Canadian Shield. This is good bedrock, shield rock. And if you pound on it in the right way, you open up a wormhole. And the wormholes, as far as we know, only go to the past. There are some hints in the book that maybe some people have figured out that they can go both ways, but they can only go to the past as far as we know. And so humans have been playing around with these machines since, well, we don't know how long, since the Paleolithic, since we're playing around with lithics, right? And so there's very early writings from classical antiquity centered around the city of Petra, because you got to have Petra in here, because it's an amazing city made out of ancient shield rock formation, and of course, I think it's in an Indiana Jones movie. I don't know. Anyway, so there's an ancient city there, and people discover a time machine, and so they start writing about it thousands and thousands of years ago. And it's only in the last couple hundred years that people like Tess, my character, have started to treat time travel as a science instead of just like opening a magical portal into somewhere. So one of the things that I really wanted to get at was, like I said, that these time machines would fit into a kind of a realistic way of thinking about how scientists would approach something that kind of made no sense and that we didn't understand, this kind of discovery science. And I also wanted with that to kind of capture what it is about science that fills us with awe. Because when we talk about things being awe-inspiring in science, looking up into the sky and wondering about it, or looking into the cells of our bodies and wondering how the frick that chromosomes actually work, those are moments of awe and wonder because we don't understand how they work yet. We will figure it out, I hope. And so I'm going to read you just a short little bit where Tess is going into the time machine that's at Flin Flon. Flin Flon is the name of a real place, by the way. It's a mining town, and it's named after a character in a science fiction novel. So Tess is at Flin Flon, and this is what happens. I stood inside a vast hangar, ceiling so high that it sometimes generated its own puffs of cloud and misty rain. The floor was pure Canadian Shield bedrock, a piebald of red and gray veined with white, covered in a few patches of hardscrabble lichen. Here, the Earth's crust had endured virtually unchanged for over 3 billion years, studded with metal deposits and ambiguous Cambrian fossils. The 5 known machines had all been found in places like this, their control interfaces embedded in rock that originated before life evolved on land. Facing me was a row of refrigerator-sized server racks connected by fat wires to bulky CRT monitors on desks. She's in 1992, by the way. She's traveling back to her home time in 2022. So there's very ancient technology embedded in the rock and then semi-ancient technology surrounding her. Fat wires connected to bulky CRT monitors on desks, cameras on metal stalks, and something that looked like the severed head of a traffic light whose color signals had been replaced with atmospheric sensors. A couple of techs typed on rugged keyboards, booting up the 6 tappers arranged in a circle around me. 500 million years ago, these machines had a sophisticated command interface made from what geoscientists called the ring and the canopy. But now, all that was left was the rocky floor. The tappers, invented in the 19th century and refined in decades since, were crude, limited versions of what those old interfaces must have been. They looked like low steel tables punctuated by dozens of pistons, now moving up and down in a test pattern. Essentially, the tapper was a reconfigurable set of padded hammers like those inside a piano. They'd bang out a pattern on the rock. That pattern programmed the interface, and the interface would open a stable wormhole between the present and the traveler's chosen destination in the past. With these humble devices, we manipulated the fabric of the cosmos. Geoscientists barely understood the machines better than the first humans to describe them in writing thousands of years ago. Sure, we could control the exit date more precisely than our Bronze Age ancestors. Our tappers could produce complex rhythms that were accurate to the microsecond, so that was progress. We knew each machine consisted of an interface within the rock, though so far our instruments could not detect anything in the rock other than the expected elements. Then there was a wormhole that came from somewhere. Sadly, our biggest breakthrough was probably that we understood the machine's behavior in the context of geology rather than magic. Even after thousands of years of using them, we still didn't know much about how they worked, let alone why.